It seems we're always transitioning. Some transitions are easy, but many are hard. And no matter how much we like where we are, we're always being propelled forward. Sometimes the end of the journey is abrupt and the cord snaps without warning. Sometimes it's slow and we see it unravel thread by thread. Sometimes we go alone and sometimes we have help crossing over. Today on Shak, we have Dr. Lesley Reece, a Barbadian general practice and palliative care physician whose philosophical beliefs focus on the importance of ensuring the best possible quality of life for patients. She's currently the Assistant Medical Director of the Barbados Association of Palliative Care and chairs their Education Committee. Dr. Reece is a fervent advocate of palliative care and uses innovative channels to educate others about the importance of this largely underrated area of medicine. She's passionate about speaking, blogging, or vlogging to remind others how to live instead of merely existing. Welcome, Dr. Reece, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having me. Quite excited about it.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you as well. So can you start by telling me what exactly is palliative care?
Okay, so according to the World Health Organization's definition of palliative care, it's the care that is given to persons who may be faced with a life-limiting illness or any serious illness, really. And palliative care is a holistic type of care. So we're not just dealing with the physical, such as pain management, as many people seem to think, but we're also dealing with the spiritual pain, your psychological or emotional pain, as well as social pain that you may be experiencing. So it's it requires a multidisciplinary team.
Okay.
And at the end of it, the whole aim is to make sure that you continue to live until you're no longer living and you have the best quality of life possible during that time.
Okay. So you mentioned something that I was wondering about, which is, palliative care includes other individuals other than doctors. You mentioned, like it's about people's spiritual well-being, their mental health, that kind of thing. So I'm just curious if it's, team is it usually just doctors or?
Right. So it's a multidisciplinary team. So really, you might have your doctor, your nurses, but we also employ the services of social workers, chaplains for the spiritual aspect. And one note I want to make about chaplaincy is that being a chaplain doesn't mean that you will only deal with a particular religious belief.
Okay.
Like, for instance, Christian chaplains are trained to respect the religious and spiritual beliefs of everyone.
Okay.
And they're able to relate to persons based on wherever they're at, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Physical therapists, dietitians. So basically, any allied health professional can help and take part in palliative care. And even if you're not an allied health professional, just somebody in the community, you can help with palliative care as well. Because, for instance, we don't have a hospice here in Barbados. So a lot of the palliative care is administered in the community in patients' homes. And to assist those persons, especially socially, you have somebody who generally may have been very outgoing or so on, and now suddenly their illness prevents them from going out. It's great to have community volunteers who would go into that person's home, spend time with them, read with them, just so that they don't feel left out or marginalized because of their illness.
Okay, that makes sense. That actually made me, you were talking about the community care and thing, because I was wondering about, or I was reading about death doulas, and I know about birth doulas, but I thought that was an interesting, interesting thing, a death doula. So I suppose they would probably be part of the process, helping individuals who, as you said, require palliative care. Do you know if there are any in Barbados? Just out of curiosity, I don't know if you know.
As far as I'm aware, no. The whole idea of death doulas seems to be quite a recent one. I've met two. I met virtually.
Fair enough. Same thing, no.
But I've met two, and listening to them speak of their experiences and how it clearly benefits the patient, it makes me wonder, why haven't we been doing this forever?
Well,
Yeah.
okay. And I guess the other thing, I mean, there's a lot about the patient. So I'm just curious in terms of some of this care. Well, it's obviously for the individual who's suffering, but does it extend to the family as well? I guess who, they're helping out and that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if that's kind of part of the palliative care
Yeah.
experience.
Yep, that's a really good question. And yes, definitely. I tend to say to others that in palliative care, my patient is not just the index patient, but the family members, the loved ones, anybody who loves this person and wants to play a part in keeping them comfortable, or, those are my patients as well. So when I am speaking on palliative care, whether it be at a seminar or webinar, what have you, I want to reinforce the point that palliative care doesn't stop when the patient dies, because then there's the bereavement part where you need to make sure that the family members are coping with this well. So it really is, the whole family circle must be involved.
Okay. Yeah. Palliative care is quite interesting. And I was just curious as to maybe how you found your way into this career.
Girl, palliative care from me.
Fair enough.
I did not choose palliative care. Palliative care chose me. But I'm happy that I did.
Okay,
so I actually wanted to cut a niche out for myself as a younger GP. And I would have to say I'm the type of person, I get bored easily. I can't be in the same place doing the same thing every single day for too long. Exactly. And what I found was a good release for me and made me enjoy my work even more was doing house calls. And I would see like some of my regular older patients at home. I was getting new patient referrals for persons at home, not necessarily palliative care per se, but then it kind of started to go that way. So I think that I started practicing very basic palliative care even before I knew that I was.
Yeah.
And a colleague of mine, who's also my friend, one day he told me about a palliative care conference that was coming up. And he said, based on what I know of you, what the reviews that people give when you go to visit them at home and so on, I think that palliative care would be something that you'd be really good at. So I think you should check it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I went to that conference, and literally as I was sitting there, I was like, yes, this is where I am supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do. And the conference was put on by the Palliative Care Association. So I immediately joined the association. And through the association, you get lots of information on upcoming conferences, courses that you can do, and so on. And I did some of those. I did a course through Harvard University in association with UE Mona.
Okay.
And that was great. Like that solidified everything for me. And I also did some online courses through Pallium, which is in Canada, that's the educational resource for palliative care in Canada.
Okay.
And I've been doing continuing medical education from a palliative point of view. Right now, I'm doing my fellowship, which is the last thing that, in terms of my qualification as a palliative care physician.
Oh, wow.
And I have to say, like, I enjoyed it. I cannot say that there has been another aspect of medicine that has given me the joy and the satisfaction that palliative care has given. And people find that amazing because people think palliative care and think, oh, it must be so sad. But there's a lot more joy than sadness.
Okay.
Because you see, the difference that you are making not only
Mm-hmm.
to that patient, but to their
To their
families,
family. Yeah.
yeah, is amazing. And I would not trade that feeling for the world. I can't say that there's any other specialty or area that has held me in the way
Okay.
that palliative care has.
Okay. So I mean, clearly it's, well, let me ask the question this way. Do you think that palliative care is something that people are well aware of, whether from a career perspective or a patient perspective?
From a patient perspective, definitely they're not as aware as they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if I were to meet 10 lay people on the street and ask them if they've ever heard of palliative care, maybe only 4 or 5 would have heard about it. And out of those 4 or 5, another 4 thinks that it's just about pain relief
Yeah.
or
Okay.
giving up on the patient or what have you. And from a career point of view, now it's better because I have colleagues who lecture medical students at UE, and
Okay. Okay.
they are trying to, raise awareness about palliative care. It's still not quite enough in terms of, I think it's like just one module out of
Okay.
the
In the
entire
program.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, Whereas, thing other fields are repeated so
Okay.
that, they catch a grasp of it. But honestly, that's stuff that I hope to be able to influence change
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
palliative care is concerned, because there definitely needs to be more awareness about it. Somebody's not going to try to access palliative care if they don't know about palliative
Yeah.
care.
This is true.
And I think it needs to be integrated more into the public healthcare system, because it's
Okay.
not.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. If it's only a private service or if it's offered in the public healthcare system.
Yeah, so
So,
unfortunately now you can only access palliative care on a private basis, which
mm-hmm.
bothers me so much, because here we have a healthcare system, public healthcare is free for all of our citizens.
Yes.
Yet one very important aspect of the healthcare being palliative care is not accessible
Yeah.
for those who may need it. And while associations such as the Barbados Association of Palliative Care will try to help as much as we can, at the end of the day, we don't have the funds to help every single patient.
Mm-hmm.
And also, because palliative care is not at the forefront of, you have so many people in Barbados who suffer from strokes and
Yes.
diabetes and losing limbs and so on. Yet palliative care, which can help those people, is underrated, is
Mm-hmm.
more or less
Mm-hmm.
neglected.
Yeah.
And that needs to change so that our citizens can actually benefit from palliative care. And there's so many benefits that go beyond the patient.
Mm-hmm.
Like, palliative care is a lot less expensive than having a patient every time they're having a complication that could be treated at home by a palliative care physician, have them in A&E for hours,
Yes.
or being admitted to ICU for something that, for an intervention that they really would not have wanted. So it
Yeah.
definitely needs to improve in those areas.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a glaring kind of gap, honestly.
Yeah.
So what would you say are maybe some of the biggest myths about palliative care? I mean, you've alluded to some of them, but I'm just curious or maybe what the biggest myth is, if you want to be more narrow.
There are two that would hold the top spots, and that is that palliative care, well, 3, palliative care is only for cancer patients. That's so not true.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, it's for any patient with a serious or life-limiting illness. Another myth is that palliative care is only about pain control, and again, that's not true. As I said, we cover we cover the entire person, your
Mm-hmm.
mind, your body, your environment.
Yes.
Um, and the most heartbreaking myth that I think is out there is that palliative care means that we've given up hope.
Mm-hmm.
Palliative care doesn't remove hope. Palliative care affirms life and recognizes that death is a part of life. But we are encouraging you to live as much as possible. I can't tell you the amount of patients who I have seen who are meeting me for the first time. You can see immediately, or sometimes in the things that they say, they feel as though, okay, my other doctors have given up on me, so now
Yes.
this is why this lady's here, what have you.
Oh, yeah.
And I sit and I have very candid conversations with them and say, I ask them what their hopes are. And sometimes their hope is not necessarily to live for another 5 years, but somebody may want to be able to attend their granddaughter's wedding,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or somebody may want to see their niece graduate. And, those are little things that we generally take for granted.
Yes.
But for somebody who knows that, there's a timeline here
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah.
fighting against, those things become really, really important.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
So would you say your approach is different with, say, men versus women or children versus adults, or rather is a different approach required or not necessarily?
Um, yes, a different approach is required. Men generally become fearful, but
Mm-hmm.
try not to show it because of how society has,
Yes.
said that men aren't supposed to show emotion or men aren't supposed to cry or what have you. Um, but what I've found is, especially for my male patients, I try to have as much alone time with them as possible so that while they may not want to show in front of their family members
Yes.
what their
Yes.
concerns are, they will at least confide in me. And I've had that happen so many times. And I just feel lucky and blessed to be able for somebody to look at me who, 6 weeks ago, you didn't know me from Adam, but you obviously feel comfortable enough to tell me, what's bothering you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not even about the illness. Sometimes it's about broken relationships or spiritual
Mm-hmm.
aspects and so on.
Yes.
And to have somebody relay those fears to me and for me to be able to honestly reassure them it means the world to me. In terms of women, what I find is, although there are a lot of women who are the head of the household, and in terms of their illness, it takes away a lot of their independence. So somebody who would normally wake up in the morning, go sweep the house, get
Mm-hmm.
breakfast started, just constantly going to then be relegated to either bed or sitting in a chair because they're just not strong enough to do what they used to do. That's hard. So
Yes.
then I have to try to relate to them on that level and reassure them.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's very different. I'm glad you asked about children as well, because lots of people don't realize that we actually do have pediatric
Yes.
palliative care patients. Sometimes it is a bit of a struggle in terms of how much does this child know. So,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
instance, if you have an 8-year-old who may have had multiple admissions to hospital, is this child aware of the seriousness of their illness? Has the family had a conversation with the child to let them know, well, this is what's happening to you? Sometimes it's the parents who are in denial. I will be honest and say that they're not my favorite.
I
They're not
couldn't
my favorite
imagine they would
patients
be. I couldn't imagine so.
for multiple reasons. But yeah, people appreciate honesty.
Okay.
And I 100% I'm honest with my patients. So I'm not going to say something to you that I know is not true just because I think that that's what you want to hear.
Yes.
But I'm also not going to be callous about it because, you know, this is your life, and there's so many things that are being affected by you having your illness.
Yeah.
And I can't discount that, and I can't make you feel as though, it's not me. I can still wake up tomorrow morning and whatever. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you are a TikTok sensation and and you do a lot of funny videos. I was just wondering if you would say, a sense of humor is useful in your line of work, or
Oh, extremely.
it's good.
Extremely. Yes. And I think that that's why I get along so well with many of my patients. And I mean, obviously you would need to read the room,
Yes, true,
but
true. I agree.
but for the most part, even if it doesn't happen on the first visit, as I build rapport with that patient and their family, I insert my sense of humor and they appreciate that. And who doesn't like to laugh? Who doesn't feel good when they're laughing?
Yeah.
No? So I definitely try to incorporate it.
Okay. Would you say that working so closely with death has impacted your view of life, or, has the general impact on you, negative or positive?
I would say it has a positive impact more so than negative. Positive in that I appreciate more, and especially the little things. And I am really big into like mindfulness now.
Mm-hmm.
And mindfulness doesn't necessarily have to mean that, you sit and you meditate or that you do yoga, all the things that people associate with mindfulness. But I say to people, when you're driving to work, what did you notice? Did you notice the two little girls at the bus stop who were playing with each other? Did you notice the bird song in your ears? Little
Unlikely.
things like that.
I probably noticed the traffic.
Exactly, right? So, and it always, sometimes I would be driving and I would see something like that, like two little kids playing or something, if I'm sitting in traffic, especially. And it would make me chuckle because I noticed it, I
Mm-hmm.
saw it, I went into that moment, and seeing that and having that make me smile or whatever will help with my mood for
Okay.
the rest of the day, right?
Okay.
Negatively though is no matter how short or how long my relationship with a palliative care patient and their family has been, it affects me because I'm human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tend to be, I would say I'm quite a sensitive person.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly don't think that I would be a good palliative care physician if I wasn't that way.
Agree.
Because patients and their families need to feel, that this person is, empathetic.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
put themselves in our
In
shoes, and
Yes.
that's very draining though on me.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So sometimes as much as possible, I try to schedule patients, my palliative patients, at a time in the day where I will either have nothing or very little to do afterwards.
Okay.
Because after that visit, I am going to need to decompress
Yes.
and,
I get you.
get past that. So
Okay.
that is what I would say is the only negative aspect about it
Okay.
for me.
So clearly, you're no stranger to difficult and uncomfortable conversations, and you've gone so far as to develop a podcast, around this theme. So maybe you can tell me a bit about your podcast, Pink Megaphone.
Yay. So my podcast, yes, is Pink Megaphone. We're in 2021 now. So yeah, 8 years ago, I had a fairly traumatic experience. I was married at the time, and it showed me, there are a lot of issues that women deal with that we don't get to talk about, or we
Mm-hmm.
are afraid to talk about them, or it's considered taboo, or
Yes.
people don't take us seriously, or what have you. And from then, I always wanted to, it felt like God had placed on my heart that, Leslie, I allowed you to experience those things because you're going to use it to help others. You're going to use
Okay.
your experience to help others. And I also think that I was insightful enough to to ask myself, why would this have happened to me? And to look back at my childhood, my preteen, teenage years, to see, what I feel was missing from them.
Okay.
So coming out of that, I actually started a mentorship program at my old primary school. My primary school is an all-girls school.
Okay.
And I would meet with the 10 to 11-year-olds who are transitioning into secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the whole aim of that program is to encourage self-love and try to build their self-confidence, because I know for me personally, throughout my teenage years, a lot of the choices that I would have made stemmed from a lack of self-confidence and not believing that I was as intelligent as I was, or as funny as I was, or even as physically attractive as other people may have thought that I was. So I could see the circle, like this leads to this and it goes back to this.
Yes, I got
Yeah. And that's what prompted me to start that. And then I always also wanted to do something for women on a whole, because I feel like no matter how much older you get, there are still things that may have happened to you when you were younger that you are still dealing with, traumas that you are still trying to work out, that are affecting your interactions with others. And that's when Pink Megaphone came to me, and I was like, Megaphone to give women a voice, and Pink because pink.
Yeah,
and
I get
so
you.
So far it's been great. I get lots of positive feedback from others, and I just right now it's just about growing it and developing it into something more where I can, probably host workshops and stuff like that for women, so that we stand in the authority that we have and the empowerment that we have, that we just sometimes don't realize or acknowledge.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting. And I did actually go and listen to a few episodes, which I enjoyed. So I have to say that.
Thank you.
Lastly, though, I mean, your plate seems already quite full. And you did mention maybe some of the things you want to do with Pink Megaphone and, mentorship and workshops and that kind of thing. But I was just curious if there is anything else that's up next for you. Not that your plate is not full enough, but, maybe what's your next dream?
My ultimate dream is two-part. I want to, right now, and I am assiduously working towards getting palliative care into the public healthcare system in Barbados. That's the one thing that I don't want to leave this earth without having done.
Okay.
And the other thing that I want to do is I have a dream of being a TED Talk speaker. And I pondered about but Leslie, what would you talk about? But more and more, it's being confirmed for me that I need to talk about palliative care, but not necessarily in the way that I would talk about palliative care at a webinar or a seminar, but in a way that everybody can relate to.
Okay.
Right? So that the message hits home and the message is spread far and wide. Right now in the fellowship that I told you I'm doing, I have colleagues from all over the world, and it's amazing to hear their own stories and realize how much you have in common with a country that, maybe times larger than we are, with a much higher GDP, but they're still having the same issues that we're having.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my dream.
Okay.
And I think it will eventually take me away from active clinical
Yes.
practice,
Yes.
but I'm okay with that
Okay.
because I feel like instead of reaching individuals, I'll be reaching larger groups of people.
Okay.
So same work, just different setup.
Very good. Well, I'm a big TED Talk fan, so I will be looking out for you then.
Yay!
So thanks so much for joining me today, Lesley. This has been very, very educational, on a topic that many may consider taboo, but I actually found this to be quite interesting. And I look forward to seeing the developments in this area. And truly, end-of-life care is a cause that requires all of our voices.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to join us every other Wednesday for another episode of Shak. Subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast platform. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also connect with us on IG, Facebook, and Twitter, or by email at akilia@shakshak.club. Let's shake things up.